Hey there, and welcome to the UkeStuff channel, and welcome to this full UkeGuide review for the Vorson Plastic Concert Ukulele. Now, I learned about these first through Jody at Girl Meets Uke, who received one of these from Daniel at Fun Ukulele Projects. And Daniel took a couple of these and modified them. He put in a side sound port, he put in a pickup, he put on side position markers, and he adjusted the action and some other things as he worked with, I think, 3 different models of the Vorson. He also ordered one of these from the UK, I believe, where they're sold under a different name, I think Coralla or something like that, and they're also made out of a slightly different material. This is ABS, and they come in a number of colors. This just happens to be the solid red one. So what we'll do with this instrument is, first of all, we will look at some subjective issues with it. Then we will look at the specifications. Then I'll summarize and offer a UkeGuide rating for the instrument. You can follow along with those on the bottom of your screen. You can actually scroll to the different chapters. The text should show up with each of those chapters, and you can also find that list in the description below. All right, let's begin with the subjective issues. The cost, between $28 and $32, depending on which color you want on Amazon. This one happened to be a return, so I jumped at it. It was under $20 when it went on as a return through Amazon Warehouse, but even so, they're very inexpensive. Now, as we talk about value, I think it's a good value. We'll talk more about this in total when we get to the summary, but I think it's a pretty decent all-plastic ukulele if that's what you're looking for. And there are a couple of things you're going to want to keep in mind with that value. You are probably going to want to replace the string, so that's probably going to add another $6, $7 to the price. And you're also probably going to want a gig bag because you get nothing other than the ukulele itself. That said, $28 to $32 for an ukulele that plays well, is set up pretty well, and sounds actually pretty decent for a plastic ukulele is not a bad deal. So the value is there, but you will have to spend a few more dollars to kind of kit it out the rest of the way. Now, as for build quality, overall, I mean, it's a plastic ukulele that comes together, is glued together, and you're good to go. As long as the mold is good, you're set. That's one of the problems with the Calla Waterman, as far as I know, is that everyone I've played, the action is really high. And it is set up that way. The mold is set that way. This does not appear to be that way. We'll get to the measurements later. So ultimately, the build quality seems pretty good. It seems like it's braced enough. I also fall back on Daniel's opinion at Fun Ukulele Projects. He shines a light through this. We'll actually take a look at this in just a moment on the inside, but he shines a light through it that shows you the fan pattern on the front. So with his positive thoughts about this instrument, I think you've got a pretty decent plastic ukulele. Now, let's take a look at what it looks like on the inside. All right, let's check out this plastic Vorson ukulele as we look down. You can see that it has a support plate molded into the ABS. It does have a tail block of sorts. You can see the support pattern that is used in the ukulele. And the bridge appears to be held down with a couple of nuts that go through the bridge into the body. It'd be very tricky to get those out, but you might be able to do it with a socket. And that's pretty much it. That's all you're looking at the inside of the Vorson here. Let's take a look at the upper bout. All right, here's the upper bout. Not a whole lot to see here. You can see a little bit more of the bracing on the soundboard. You can see the plastic neck block that's added there. And that's pretty much it. We're not going to see much more in this ukulele. So that's our quick look at the Vorson Plastic Concert Ukulele. All right, we're back. So you had a chance to see what it looks like on the inside. And again, I would refer you to any of Daniel's videos with this instrument to see more about the ways that he modified it and what he thought about its quality. Now, before we go to talk about appearance, let me also just mention that the tuners are not the greatest. Daniel worked with them with some 3-in-1 oil for quite some time. They could upgrade the tuners, and quite honestly, I would pay $3 more for this instrument with better tuners than the ones that are on it. Now let's talk about appearance. It doesn't look bad. I mean, it's a plastic ukulele, but it's too bad in this day and age, after they've made their money back for making the mold, that they couldn't try some other colors. Now they do have some other colors available, but just more than just shiny red. You know, what about a matte finish, or what about some texture in it, or something like that? So it's too bad that they don't have that option. It's very plain and it looks very plasticky, and that's probably the biggest negative of the instrument, is how sort of cheap it looks. It looks far cheaper than it actually sounds or plays. Now, as for availability, you can order these off of Amazon right now. The stock of colors seems to change from time to time. So not all colors are available at all times, and some colors are less expensive than others. If you're looking to save some money, I think right now the pink one is the cheapest. So if you wouldn't mind playing with a plastic pink ukulele, then you could save yourself a couple bucks. But the price difference is not really that great between the colors, and just watch if there's a certain one that you like to see when it comes into stock. They do keep floating in and floating out of stock. Now, in terms of playability, it has a couple really good things going for it. It has a standard 35mm nut, but the spacing is really wide. Now, there is a negative on that, which is the first and fourth strings, the G and the A strings. They are more close to the edge of the fretboard than you might be used to. So if you are going to play some things with like pull-offs, or do some string bending, you could accidentally pull the string off of the fretboard. But for most players, that's not going to be much of an issue, especially on an inexpensive plastic ukulele. But what it does is it creates a lot of space on that fretboard. So if you're a person with large hands, you actually might like playing this because you actually do have some extra space up here. Now, on top of that, it seems to be set up very well. I didn't have to mess with it all. I'm pretty happy with the setup that it has. And the only potential negative for me is that it sort of has a C shape. Now, it's not a pure round C like we're totally used to. It's a little flatter than that, but I wouldn't mind if this profile was yet just a little bit flatter. But it's absolutely playable right now. There's no problems with it. You can play on any C-shaped neck too. But for me, I would just like it a little bit flatter. That's not going to change. Once you make the mold for something like this, you're not going to change it. Just so you know, it is more of a C profile. Now let's talk about sound quality. As I play it, it's definitely a plastic sound. There is sustain, especially in that mid-range of the instrument. It doesn't have a lot of high shimmer, and part of that might be the strings. And absolutely, once I'm done with this review, I'll be putting different strings on this one. So it's got a little bit of that plastic tubby sound, which you would expect. But when you buy a plastic ukulele, you don't expect it to sound like a solid Koa $1,200 instrument, right? It's a $28 to $32 instrument. And it's absolutely playable. And the sound is absolutely fine, even with the stock strings. Now, in terms of volume, I don't think it's super loud. It's not quiet either, though. But you do get, again, sort of a more percussive effect than usual, and which happens with a lot of plastic ukuleles. So as you play, you do hear your fingers sort of hit that plastic fretboard in a different way than a wooden fretboard. And the tone tends to be more dark than bright. It's still balanced, but it just doesn't have that high-end shimmer. And again, it has some decent sustain for a plastic ukulele. Now, one of the things I like to do is I like to let you see what I'm hearing. So I play the C chord on a GCA instrument, and I let you see what happens as I strum all the strings, and then what happens with the sustain. So here we go. So if I summarize what I'm seeing there is you can see a lot of low and mid range, and the sustain drops off very quickly, even though I think I'm hearing more sustain than Tonal Energy Tuner is picking up in this particular instrument. Nonetheless, the sustain is in that lower and mid range, and Again, the high shimmer just isn't there on this instrument, and that's okay for a plastic ukulele. Now that we've talked about the subjective issues with the instrument, let's talk about the specifications. It is a concert ukulele, and the scale length from the nut to saddle is 14.8125 inches, so just under 15 inches. It has 18 frets, although the Amazon listing says it only has 17, and there are 14 frets to the body. There are no side marker dots, and I think that's a real negative with this instrument. It is 2021. Most instruments come with side marker dots, and this one should too. The body style is a plastic double bout, and of course the soundboard sides and back are all made out of ABS. The fretboard is also made out of ABS, and it is not radius, and the bridge is made out of ABS, and it's a tie bar bridge. The nut and saddle are made out of plastic, and I know that Daniel worked on lowering that saddle, so it is adjustable. It is not a compensated saddle. The finish is a gloss plastic. I think they could do some other things with the finish, making a matte finish or some textures without having to have it be just a gloss plastic sort of look. The overall length is 23.75 inches from tip to tail, and it's 1 pound, 3.6 ounces. It feels heavier than it really is, and it's balanced pretty well. It has sort of not great open-geared tuners. They could be better, and again, I think I would prefer to spend a couple more dollars to get better tuners. The action at the first fret is just over 0.25 millimeters, so it's nice and low, and the action at the 12th fret is 2.5 millimeters, so really a decent setup on a plastic ukulele, which is really nice to see. The nut width is 34.78 millimeters, and the string spacing is wide, 9.01 millimeters between each string at the first fret. That's pretty wide, and 29.33 millimeters from G to A. So that's pretty spacious for a 35 millimeter nut. And again, the sacrifice is that you don't have much room on the sides of the fretboard after the first and fourth string. And finally, the depth of the fretboard at the third fret is 19.98 millimeters. That's not super deep. And again, the C shape is there. It's not quite as severe as some other situations, but I wouldn't mind to see yet a little bit more towards a D than that C. All right, now that we've talked about subjective issues and we talked about the specifications, let's summarize the instrument. I learned about this again through Jody at Girl Meets Uke, who had one of these from Daniel at Fun Ukulele Projects. If you don't subscribe to both their channels, you should look them up right after this video. And Daniel has at least 3 great videos with this instrument. Now the instrument does have some flaws, and it is by nature a plastic ukulele. So that means that it's going to sound like a plastic ukulele, and being ABS, you don't want to leave this in your hot car in the summer because it will melt. You might even want to be a little careful in frigid temperatures, such as where I live in Wisconsin and teach in Minnesota, where we get sub-zero weather, because that could also be harmful to the instrument potentially. Now, that said, I think you would want to put on different strings. It would be great if it had side marker dots. It would be great if it had better tuners. And you will definitely want a gig bag with it. That all said, it's set up well. It plays well. It sounds okay. This would be a great instrument for a first instrument if you don't want to spend a lot of money and you don't want to worry about breaking it. And at the $28 to $32 price point, you're still really $15 to $25 off from being able to get into a pretty decent sort of laminate kit for an instrument. So it's a pretty good value. And if you're looking for a pure plastic instrument, this is probably the best one that's out there right now in 2021, and it's not a new option. I think I would say with some confidence that I would recommend this over the Waterman Concert, which I'll be reviewing in the future as well. Finally, if you're going to take this into the water, I just want to remind you that the tuners are metal, and you're going to have to be thoughtful of that, as well as worrying about cleaning out the inside of your instrument. So for example, if you took it into a lake or the ocean, you want to make sure that you clean it out real well on the inside. And then you're going to want to probably attack the tuners with oil immediately the first opportunity you get when you're out of the water so that the tuners don't rust. Other than that, it's a pretty impressive plastic ukulele. All right, in full disclosure, this next part here is being recorded almost a week later. I just got done editing the video and realized I forgot to include the rating of the instrument. So let's do that. Considering everything about this instrument, its price, its playability, its decent sound, and its shortcomings, I would give this a 4 out of 5 ukuleles in my review sort of style. So with that in mind, it's not perfect, but it's really decent for a $28 to $32 plastic ukulele. All right, that's it for this video. I hope you're having a great day, and I will be back soon with some more Uke stuff for you.